I had never lectured in Hindi before. But then after coming to ISKCON lecture, everybody would say Hindi, Hindi, Hindi. Then I started forgetting English. So I had to literally hunt for English forums in order to preserve my knowledge. Then I was in Gujarat for a month in Bhavnagar. I was forgetting Hindi also. Gujarati ma baat karu chu. Hare Krishna. I was forgetting. So thank you. So I was just confirming we'll have it in English. All right. So any quick points what you all appreciated? Any points from yesterday? Anybody? What have you liked? What have you appreciated?
Explanation of Brahman.
Yes.
Sometimes we heard of Brahman, but yesterday's
Yeah, exactly. In yesterday's explanation of, we could get a total picture of what exactly is that Brahman, Virat, Purusha, Vishwarubhara, what is these things? We hear so much about it, and then we are not able to visualize it. And one thing we realize that we can't visualize it. That is why there is a lot of headache. You try to visualize, Bhagwan खुद बोलते क्लेशो अधिकतरस्तेषां. पहले क्या होगा? Very nice headache, and then they will have backache, front ache, then everything will ache. That is your experience. Avyakta hi gatir dukkham dehavat viravakyate. That's what you'll experience. Thank you, Amol Prabhu. Anyone else? Any point?
You covered a very important point of Maryada Vyatikrama.
Yes, there was a point of Maryada Vyatikrama that there was Maitreya Rishi who was available to speak the Srimad Bhagavatam, and Uddhava felt that, well, he should be the person who will be explaining this Paramam Sthitim, the message that Krishna has left for Vidura, not me. Thank you. Anyone else? I'm sorry? Yes. Ultimately, whatever you do, you should do it for Ante Narayana Smriti. And Bhakti gives you a sure, direct, and yet a very certain, the result is certain. It is not certain in other paths. Yes. And it's a direct process. You directly address the Bhagavan. And it's very safe. Bhakti is very safe. There is no, very less likelihood of fall down in the path of Bhakti. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we discussed, or we just had a nomenclature of the 10 topics, and just a brief, one line about what are these 10 topics. Okay.
21 questions, and out of that, 4 important.
Yes. The 21 questions were there in the 8th chapter by Parikshit Maharaj. The entire chapter is about questions, but we handled 4 questions. Jnanam paramoyam me yad vijnanasmanvitam sarahasyam tadangam cha grihana gadidam maya. Very nice. That's what made the Chaturshloki. In fact, the entire rest of the whole Bhagavatam is going to be based on those 21 questions. That is the trigger for the rest of the whole Bhagavatam. Yes, thank you. Anyone else?
What are 3 things to do?
Yeah.
Shravanam and Kirtanam, and in Kirtanam also you have been. So there was some confirms that Nama Kirtanam,
Nama Kirtan is the most powerful way. If you don't have time, कलियुग सोच मतलब टाइम नहीं है. चलो कथा के लिए टाइम नहीं है. अरे भक्ति कीजिए, थोड़ा टाइम नहीं है. प्रसाद लीजिए, हाँ टाइम नहीं है. हाँ बिल्कुल. Anyways, so it is Hare Namanam Kirtanam. Thank you. There's one more point. Yes.
10th canto is the highlight,
Yes.
and all the cantos are simply glorifying the temple.
Very nice. Thank you. So the 10th canto is the crux of Srimad Bhagavatam, and all of the 9 cantos are around it to spotlight that 10th canto. Thank you.
Second point is
Yes. There is foolish methods of worships which are elaborated, and for a second we think, my God, is this Bhagavatam or कोई पुराण खोल दिया दूसरा वाला? Third canto कुछ और अदला बदली हो गया. Then we realize that is for foolish people, less intelligent people. But on the other hand, the devotee Uttama Shloka Vartaya. He's always after Krishna. Okay. So very good points. Vijay Raman? My God. Yes, sure. Definitely.
Jnanis, where do they go after seeking? So Jnanis, they say go to Brahman. So where is that in the sense?
Yes, where exactly do the Jnanis go? See, there are 4 types of Jnanis mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. Yes, 4 types of Jnanis. 2 Jnanis are considered to be good souls, and 2 Gyanis are considered to be very imperfect souls. The problem with the 2 other Gyanis is they offend the form of the Supreme Lord. They offend and mistake Krishna's Leela, Guna, Nama, etc. to be Maya. So these are called as Mayavadi Gyanis. So these people go to, in fact, as per Ishopanishad, they tato eva bhuyate tamo. If there is something even worse than hell, they go there. So that is the destination. And what about those who are Brahmavadis? Yes, where do they go? So they go to this, they cross beyond the Viraja river and go to the Paravyoma. They enter into the spiritual world, but they don't go and meet the Lord. There's a difference between entering the kingdom, entering the palace, and entering the inner quarters, the inner sanctorum. So these people enter the kingdom, but they don't enter the palace of the Lord. So kingdom of the Lord means Paravyoma. So the rays emanating from Krishna's body, Brahmano hi pratishtaham, that impersonal Brahman, they stay there for some time. But that's a metastable state. It's not a proper equilibrium. That's not the right position of a living entity. Because mukti means what? They aspire for mukti. Bhagavatam very clearly says, mukti ritva anyata rupam sarupena vyavastitihi. Mukti means all other forms, including the Brahman, we don't accept. We only perform unalloyed, uninterrupted devotional service unto Krishna, which is available in Vaikunta, Saket, Dwarka, and Golok. That's it. Nowhere else. Yes, so these people, they are in the spiritual sky floating. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Yes. And after some time, they go get bored with that Shanti. Why? Because suppose there is a person who has been an employee. Yes, an employee gets a salary. On the other hand, a probationer gets a stipend. And if you were to give a stipend to an employee, will he be happy? No, right? Brahmanand is compared to a drop in front of the limitless ocean of bhakti. That's what the Shastras say. Moksha laguna krita. Yes. So the person is not going to be satisfied with that Shanti for a long time. It can go on for some time, but that's not everlasting. Right? So then there is an aspiration for doing some activity, some manifesting some desires, to have some exchange. And most often what happens is the person comes to the material realm back. But if, I've heard this also from the Shastras, that if somebody is fortunate enough to get the association of pure devotees along the way, then one will transcend even the Paravyoma and enter into the personal relationship with Krishna. And the yogis we spoke about, they mostly get the Shantarti because they have an admiration for the personal form of Lord, but not necessarily they are rendering any active service. It is only Bhagavan who is personal, active, and reciprocal. Right?
There are trees, you said.
Yeah, one of the Shantaras. One of the Shantaras is the trees. That's what Krishna glorifies the trees in front of Brahma. Etavan, Evajala. He says, Etava Janma Safalyam Dehinam Hedeshu Pranirarthirdiya Vacha Shriya Acharanam Sada. So in that context, Krishna says that they have all been great yogis in the last life. That's how they get the Dhammas as trees.
In terms of learning, I just say it starts with the don'ts.
Yes.
It's more important to first know what the don'ts are.
Yes.
Start with the don'ts and then get
into the do's. Exactly. And that's how Srila Prabhupada even beautifully presents bhakti. He says first, bhakti is not sentimental speculation. It is not imaginative ecstasy. That's what people think is bhakti outside. Sentimental speculation. Chalo, aasu aa gaye, baal khade hue. I've seen people coming and telling me, देखो दर्शन को है लाला जी की मेरे बाल खड़े हो गए, and all people show that. देखिए जैसे ठाकुर जी का नाम लिया आंख अश्रु आ गए. The same person is going to watch a movie and cry there also. No big deal. That's what is going to happen. So bhakti is not sentimental speculation or imaginative ecstasy. That is not. And then Srila Prabhupada later on has made a very unique contribution by adding a very important suffix that bhakti is not devotion, it is devotional service. So then he goes on to explain that. Thank you. What are we supposed to discuss today? Pakka na? My God. Mataji actually told me, Prabhuji, मैं देखती हूँ how you're going to finish the 2 cantos. And I was wondering, I need your blessing. Without that, I can't go. The 2 cantos. All right. So there was a special request put forward by Vijay Raman Prabhu, ये महत तत्व और वो सब बताएंगे ना. I said, I'm not going to skip that. At least for you, I'm going to say it. And that is what exactly is the topic that was discussed by Maitreya and Vidura, because he first starts off with explaining Sukhaya Karmani Karoti Loko, Natai Sukham Van Yaduparamam Va, Vindeta Bhuyat, Ataiva Dukham, Yadatra Yuktam Bhagavan Vadena. Please understand, people here are aspiring for happiness, but they don't get happiness. In fact, they get more misery. Imagine you're looking for happiness, you pick up products which are happiness, you open that, you only get miseries. Such kind of world is there. Who is this world made? So he's very eager and he probes into how the creation happened. And that is what something we are going to be discussing for some short while. So we need to understand that the creation happens in 1/4 of the entire existence of the Lord. And that place is called as material world. Yes, 1/4. Ekam Shena Stito Jagat, 1/4 of that. And then in that portion, there is a personality, a very big personality. Yes. And that personality is called Mahavishnu. So Mahavishnu is the personality who starts the creation, which is called Karana Srishti. Karana Srishti. So the Vedic mantras also explain Saha Aikshataha Saha Asrijata. This personality, Aikshataha, by glancing, he produces. So on what does he glance? That glance, now I'm going to explain something which will be very interesting. The glance that he performs is on the substance which is called as Prakriti. Now Prakriti is a separated energy, so it stays outside of it. Prakriti. So now Prakriti can be compared to a very young girl. A small girl is Prakriti. Yes. An unmarried small young girl is Prakriti. And as the time, Tatrayam Aropana Tulya Kalam, the right time arrives. That time the Prakriti gets transformed into a mature, marriageable girl who is capable of begetting progeny. And that is called as Pradhana. The same Prakriti becomes Pradhana at the right time. And through, by casting the vision on Pradhana, the vision is called as Shambhu. Shambhu. And that Shambhu is Shiva. Shiva Tattva, Shambhu Tattva. One may ask, what is the difference between our Sadashiv or Shambhu, Rudra, Shiva? I'm going to tell that also. I'll give you that knowledge as well. So what happens is he casts the glance which is called a Shambhu and thus impregnates the Pradhan with Jiva and Kala. These two things. And thus after impregnation, the pregnant woman is called as Mahat Tattva. So Mahat Tattva is a place where all states are in equilibrium. There is no, the states are in unmixed format. So the three modes are not yet activated. And when the baby is delivered, that is called as Ahankara. It's called as Vidya Ahankara, false ego. And the false ego is divided into three parts. Satvika Ahankara, Rajasika Ahankara, and Tamasika Ahankara. And the Satvika Ahankar gives rise to mind and the 10 sense devatas. They appear through the Satvika Ahankar. That is the Satvik mode of goodness. Through Rajasic Ahankar appears intelligence and the 10 senses. So they appear through Rajasic Ahankar. And Tamasic Ahankar through them appears 5 sense objects. Shabda, Rasa, Rupa, Gandha, Sparsha. Tanmatras, they also appear. The 5 sense objects, we call it, Tanmatras, they appear. And also appear the 5 Mahabhutas. Bhumira, Apa, Anala, Vayu, Kham. Got it? So this 5 plus that 5, Tamasic Ahankar, 10. Then the 10 senses, 20. The intelligence, 21. The mind, 22. The false ego and Mahat Tattva, because they are separate entities. False ego is also in one sense. After delivery of the child, mother remains, no? Basically, mother becomes the child. So false ego be separate of the entity. And Mahat Tattva also existence is considered. So these are considered. Some consider 23, 24 the soul. Wo bhi sahi hai. It's our perspective. Some people say, okay, fine. Mahat Tattva 24, 24 material elements. Okay, they make it like that. That is also fine. There's no problem. Right? So like this, they study 24. elements, or 23 plus 1 soul. Soul is different from all these things. Anyway, that counting doesn't matter. Ultimately, it's about Sankhya. Some say 16, 18, it's all permutation combination. So this is the ingredients of the material world. They are generated. Then there is Karya Srishti, which is explained. What happens in the Karya Srishti? In the Karya Srishti, after with these ingredients, again, since so far now Brahma has not come into place, it's only Mahavishnu who is doing all this work. So then what happens is through the Karya Srishti, Mahavishnu enters into every single universe. As Garbho Dakashai, Garbha means the womb. Universe is also considered like a mother's womb inside. Jo rehta hai Garbha. Udaka means water. He enters, he says, "Arey, mere ko sone ke liye koi jagah nahi hai." So he perspires. Please don't ever imagine that Lord's perspiration is like our perspiration. Don't say that. Many years back, we had gone for a Melakote Yatra. Many years back. So वहाँ पे मेलकोटे यात्रा में my mentor, he was taking us to yatra. I was attending, and he had told me that this particular pond, you know what is? This is the sweat drop of Varahadev when he was fighting with Hiranyaksha. I was very new that time. Gee, ये क्या है? ऐसा sweat का drop गिरा है. And I saw him doing offering obeisances, doing Achman, and he took the water and took drops and did this and all this stuff. And I was watching him. And then he looked at me. He said, "Maybe." I said, "Come." बोले sweat नहीं पीने वाला मैं किसी का. भगवान का भी होने दो, कोई बात नहीं. That time so much ego. So I went and I 1, 2, 3. I said, "What? This is the tastiest thing I've ever tasted." सही में perspiration bottle भर के लेके गए फिर हम लोग. So Lord's perspiration is transcendental. With that, he covers the half of the universe, and he himself lies in the southern direction. So this is the beginning of Karya Srishti. And then what happens is he releases a golden color semen which is called as Hiranyagarbha. This is a sum total of all the living entities, golden living entities. What is the color of the soul? Golden in color. Yes. And even if you read Mahabharata, the first verse speaks about the golden egg. So even this universe from a distance looks like gold. Previously, how was this earth? Golden. अभी कोई विश्वास नहीं करेगा. अभी लूट पाट बन जाता है एकदम. बाप रे. That is the color of the entire universe. That's how it is. So the golden semen is released, and then from his navel comes a stem and a lotus. This is how it appears, the creation, Karya Srishti, till here. And then what happens is now the Lord, amongst all the golden living entities, personally handpicks. Usually a leader is appointed by election, but here the leader is appointed by selection. So he personally handpicks the most shining, the most glorious, the most meritorious, and the most effulgent and deserving candidate and places him as Brahma. Great. That's why Brahma is called great. Brahma means great. Yes, so he places him within that. And then the universes, all the devatas, they are placed in their respective positions as per so that the lotus stem that came out, we already saw this, right? In yesterday's class. What is that? Planetary systems, nothing else. So all planetary systems, Atala, Vitala, Talatala, Mahatala, Rasatala, Patala, and Om, Bhur, Bhuvasva, Visena, Bhuloka, Bhuarloka, Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, Satyaloka, all of them exist on that stem, top to bottom. Satyaloka is that place which is, yes, the lotus that comes. And then we saw about Brahma's tapasya and all these things. Just before that, what happens is none of them is activated. Nothing is working. It is like a person wants to do a startup company. He's bought all the equipments, tables, chairs, laptops, facilities, sound systems, सब कुछ लगा के रख दिया. But there are no people there. ये लोग come to my company and company है dead company. क्या करते हो आप लोग? What softwares do you make or what do you manufacture? So it was like a dead universe. Everything was dead, and this remained for some 10,000 years. It remained dead. Yes, it remains like that in standstill condition. And that's when all the creative elements, what the devatas, they all together start offering prayers that we want to serve. Please awaken us, give us the potency. And only you can give us the potency. That is when Garbhoda Kashaya Vishnu expands into each and every particle in the universe as Kshiro Dakashai Vishnu. We also discussed why the name is Kshiro Dakashai Vishnu. Above Dhruvaloka and below Maharloka, there's a 1 lakh square mile planet where is the deity. And that personality explains. So whenever Shweta Dvipam, they go there. For Devatas, Brahmaji has to. Actually, the Brahmaji has a headquarters above Meru Parvat also, so he goes easily. There's an access point there. So they all together go to Shweta Dvip. That's the dham there. So that is the abode of Kshiro Dakashai Vishnu, where Mother Lakshmi is massaging his lotus feet. And that's how he expands, and then everything gets activated. It's like power on, then all fan, light, everything starts working, like the universe starts functioning. So this is called as Karya Srishti. So till now, who has done the job? Only the Lord. Nobody else. Ab tak kisi ne kuch nahi kiya. And then comes that episode of Brahma who realizes and everything. So Bhagavatam continues from there as the prayers of Brahma, which comes in 3.9. He prays for creative energy. Beautiful prayers he offers. Fortunately, we don't have the time to cover all the prayers. We'll not be taking it. He just prays. I'm doing in Sutra format. And even if you see in these chapters, later on, after Brahma prays for creative energy, he gets empowerment. He gets empowerment. And after Brahma is empowered, he begins to create. Now I'm going to start my service. And as soon as he starts creating, what happens? Sasa jagare andatamishra matatamishra madikrit mahamohamcha mohamcha tamascha ajnana vrittaya. My God, I wanted to create something of meaningful value, but I ended up creating everything out of nuisance value. 5 types of ajnana vrittis. The 5 types of nesciences were generated. Now, if you want to know what are these 5 are exactly the same as avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, and abhinivesha. So I normally prefer explaining this through this 5 kinds of nesciences. Avidya means what? Avidya means ignorance of one's existence. It's because of these first ajnana vrittis that we all believe, we have full faith that we are this body and not the soul. Soul बोल के कोई चीज है ही नहीं. Go and talk to the scientists. They are so damn convinced. We are nothing but a materialistic phenomena, a chemical phenomena. That's what life all about. They are damn convinced. मन करता है पकड़ के. Really feel like the devotees feel like भगवान बोल रहे इतना जोर जोर से नत्वेवाहम जातुरसम. These guys don't hear. They don't want to believe in it. So they are so damn convinced. Why? Avidya. And after avidya, what happens? Asmita. Asmita means mine. This is mine. Ye mera hai. This is mine. This is all mine. This is asmita. The sense of belonging to this material world increases. Because you ultimately consider yourself nothing but bunches of chemical bundles. वो हो गया. तीसरा क्या है? Then राग. मराठी मध्ये राग वेगळा है. और माताजी का राग अलग है. That is different. She sings beautiful ragas. I was hearing relishing. I didn't want to come in. I thought little more time. Let them have kirtans. But then I have to come. Dekh liya. The Captain Kunal ji saw me. He caught me. He will do my court martial. So I came inside. Hare Krishna. So I had to come. So raga means attachment. And when you know you're attached to something, then it is taken away. No. Taken away. Right. So this is raga that develops. And then after some time, the same thing will give you frustration. Because attachment and aversion are 2 sides of the same coin. That's what we see. That's the phenomenon of this world. Something which you are too attached to, the same thing will frustrate us. And we're not happy about it. And then finally, in this way, a person gets into different raga and tyaga, raga, tyaga, etc. And that becomes abhinivesha. One becomes materially absorbed. Into what? Into materialism. How many of you seen absorbed people? Absorbed. I've seen many. Look here, Gita, those guys are easy. For them, Shunyaitam Jagat Sarvam. Coding Virahiname. They cannot even fund. Machines. Really machines. Those kind of people. I've seen professors in college absorbed. You go to their room, pull their drawer, take money also and go, they will not mind. No problem. Their research will disturb. Like that they were. absorbed. My God, Stalin. You heard of Stalin, the Russian fanatic? So he had reached. He got some hernia operation. So he had told the doctors, "Ki you please operate me. Chalo, ready karo." And the doctor said, "We are running out of anesthesia. It's wartime situation. We cannot get chemicals so easily." He said, "Never mind, do it." एक छोटा सा स्क्रैच लगता है, we are like screaming on the top of our voice. The entire cosmos क्या मगर पट्टा जग जाएगा, कहीं क्या हो गया? And he's going to do hernia operation, very painful. The intestines are going to be pulled out, and that way said, "Do it." And he did not even once इतना भी नहीं हुआ उसको. Why? He was asked later on, "Sir, कैसे किया आपने? How did you get this siddhi? कौन सी तपस्या की थी?" He said, "I was absorbed in making plans how to win the war." This is called Vishaya Abhinivesh. ना सुन के इतना हमको लगता है, what is this? But that's this fact. This is a true story. So this is Abhinivesh, and this is what engulfed all the living entities in the time to come. So Brahma said, "Never mind." He again, see, failures will come. This entire creation started with what? With failure. You wanted to produce something meaningful, came out exactly the opposite. Samudra Manthan, Leela, I'm going to speak a little bit because I'm not going to get a chance to speak to all of you. So, Samudra Manthan, Leela kiya, Amrit produce karna tha, nikla wish. This is the world. In the beginning, you may produce the results which are exactly not what you expect, but patience is something that we need to cultivate. So, Brahmaji was persistent. He did not give up. Bhagwan seva diye, empower ke, kya kar diya aapne? चलो बिल्कुल उल्टा इतना मैं नहीं कर रहा, चलो सर्विस, आई एम रिजाइनिंग. ही डिडंट ड्रॉप अ मेल, आई एम रिजाइनिंग, चलो छोड़ दो मेरे को, यू डू, आई विल गो एंड डू माय sadhana. He didn't do that. He said, I will carry forward. So he again meditated on the Lord and continued his service. We have to be persistent. And after his thorough persistence, in the same manner, there appeared 4 very, very tiny, very, very cute boys. 4 of them, and he was so amazed. I wanted 1, I got 4. So I'm going to expand my business 4 folds. Amazing. He named them. Namakaran has to be done instantly. Sanaka, Sanatana, Sanandana, Sanat Kumar. Yes, all of you. And then he was looking at them. Arey bado, arey aage bado. They were not growing. They were not just growing, they were stand still. Itne 5 saal ke. So I asked them, बच्चों क्या प्लान है आप लोगों का? बड़ा होके बिजनेस नहीं संभालने क्या? You don't have to. And said, sorry. We grow up. When we grow up, the vices which are dormant in our hearts, especially the lusty desires, they also pop up. Hence, we have decided to remain like this. मतलब वासुदेव पारायण. हम लोग जो है, we want to be Krishna conscious, we want to be brahmacharis. Yes. So the first creation of Brahma, there are 4 brahmacharis. Yes. And people say, आप लोग कौन से planet से आए हो? This was the creation beginning. Brahmacharis, 4 of them were the creation. They were all very, very blissful and happy, but Brahma was not so happy. Oh, gussa. And usually the gussa, the anger comes in prakuti. Face is the index of mind, but especially you want to see somebody is angry or not, you should see prakuti, the eyebrow. Frowning and trying to control. And as he was doing that, from his eyebrows came a bluish, black, reddish tinged person. That's the person he came. He was reddish, at the same time he was bluish. This kind of personality just popped there. And he came. And as soon as he came, he started crying. He started crying. He's not stopping toys. No toys. He was crying like that. So Brahma then told, all right, what I will do is I will give you 11 places and I'll give you 11 wives. So शादी करेगा, रोना बंद हो जाएगा. In this world, there's a different experience. That's what people say. I don't have experience, but people say that. Right? So he married 11 wonderful ladies, and then he was very peaceful. So then he called him. Abhi sab thi? All going well? Chalo aa jao, business karte hain. Let's do it. So Lord's instruction that we have to populate and expand. Tum dekh loge? He said, no problem. And this 11 personalities expanded into many, many thousand folds. And Brahma said, I can go and take rest. He said, no problem, Daddy. Pitaji, jaiye. Aap karo. You rest. And Brahmaji was very relaxed. Oh my God, this fellow I got such a wonderful son. And he just thought that maybe I should just switch on the remote control and see what's happening. So he turned on the CCTV cameras, and you know what was happening? This all personalities with their eyes, they were throwing out fire. fire they were throwing out, and they were burning the whole creation. Hey, itne mehnat se banaye, they barbaad kar rahe. You fellows are meant to take my business to newer heights, and you people are destroying everything. Stop! Immediately stop. तो क्या कर रहे हो? तो जो आता है कर रहे हैं हम लोग. He said very clearly, you all are not qualified to create. Go and do tapasya, sadhana karo. Yes, go and perform your devotional service. Go do sadhana meditation. Go and get purified first, and then you may not create also. I'll call you at the time of destruction. Aapke activities वैसे ही लग रहे हैं. At the time of destruction, we'll call you. That's the right time. Till then, you do tapasya. Don't do any other further damages. So this is a very important lesson for us. Is our consciousness, our mentality is what we propagate ahead. So if we are not very pure at heart, then it is not possible for us to purify others. It's not possible for us to enlighten others. So it's very, very important and essential that we first purify our heart. Janma sarthaka kari karo paropakar. So it's told first you purify your heart. And I will that too. Service to gaya. Now I'll give you service of destruction only. So 11. So what is the difference? Sadashiv is actually non-different from Mahavishnu. There's no difference between them. And he stays in a place called Mahesh Dham. This is called Daini Dham. Above this there is Mahesh Dham. Above that there is Vaikuntha Dham. Then there is Golok Dham. Like this Char Dham. So Mahesh Dham is a special cabinet for Chief Security Officer of Vaikuntha. That is a position given to Sadashiva. So he stays there. And then when the Sadashiv expands as a potency for primary creation, Karana Srishti, he is called as Shambhu. What is he called? Shambhu. And the same Shambhu personality expands into every universe as 11 Rudras. 11 Dwadasha, Ekadasha Rudra. So that's all happening by the wish of Narayana. Adyo Narayana Asit, Na Brahmana Ishano, Na Suryo, Na Chandro. Then Narayano Brahmo Vijayate, Narayano Dwadashadityo Vijayate, Narayano Ekadash Rudro Vijayate. This is what we recite in our mantras. So Narayano Ekadash Rudro Vijayate. Yes. So ultimately he is the cause behind those 11 personalities. The one expanding into 11. So they are Rudras. Among those Rudras, one is called as Shankar. Rudranam Shankaras Chasmi. This is what Lord Krishna tells in the Vibhuti Yoga chapter. Among the Rudras, I am Shankar, who is Umapati, who resides on Kailash. He is called Shankar. And when this Shankar, he accepts Ganga on his head, that time he becomes Shiva. Jipadala Viya Shiva, Shivatvala Viya, Ekona Bhojino Prabhu, Tomara Charani. Yes. So like that. The same personality, when Daksha gives a curse to moon, he accepts the moon on his head. He is very good at giving shelter to everyone. He becomes Chandra Maulishwara. In Udupi Kshetra, there is a place called Chandra Maulishwara. He becomes Chandra Maulishwara. Like that. Mauli means head. His name is Chandra. He becomes Gangadhar, Chandra Maulishwara. So all this, he accepts everything. So such personality is our Shiva. And then later on, Brahmaji again, he said, Abhi mujhe hi kuch karna padega. Through his different parts, he produced different entities. Through his mind, he produced Manasa Putras. Through his deliberation and heart, he produced Narada. Through his thumb, he produced Daksha. Then he produced to different parts, Pulaha, Pulatsya, and all of them came out. And then after that, he was just deliberating. Should I be doing all this? Won't I get some assistance? As he was deliberating like that, in front of his eyes appeared Manu and Shatarupa, a couple. There was one man and there was one female, male and female form. And now through this product of male and female, the population could expand. And his name was Swayambhuva Manu. Who is Swayambhu? Swayambhu is Brahma, who is self-manifested without a mother, who is manifested called Swayambhu, who has come about by himself. Correct? And Swayambhu's son is called Swayambhuva Manu. Swayambhuva Manu. Vivaswan's son is Vaivat Satamanu. Like that, it is Swayambhuva Manu with Shatarupa. He appeared. And as soon as he appeared, he was very happy. Brahma said, finally, chalo mera kaam ho gaya. Now I can peacefully go into sadhana. So Manu, go and expand and populate with the earth. Go there. I give you that territory. Manu says, which earth are you talking about, father? Earth to hai nahi. He said, earth to nahi hai. Aise kaise ho sakta hai? He looked down and saw that the earth had sunken to the region of Rasatal. There is a logic how this happens that in fifth canto we'll get to know, because there is a clearance gap which is there between the earth and the crust of the universe. So clearance gap की वजह से वो थोड़ा नीचे चला गया था, and the waters had come up. Brahma was saying, "Oh, we were so busy in this creation, we did not." Sometimes it happens, right? Kitchen में दूध overflow हो गया. This is an experience, right? कुछ और हो गया, पानी गिर गया. Many things can happen, right? So all these things happen when you are doing multitasking. And some of you have made in such a way our life is that we have to do multitasking only. We have many rules. We wear different hats at different times. So एक बार एक hat लगाना है, वो hat neglect हो गया हमारा. It happens. So Brahma ji then was deliberating how to take out. At that time, from the nostril of Brahma ji appeared a personality. And this personality came in the form of a thumb, Mushta Rupa, and then eventually the size of an elephant. And to cut the story short, he was whitish in color and called as Shweta Varaha. So he entered into the ocean, picked up the earth, and came out. Along with the story of Shweta Varaha, there's a description also of Neela Varaha, who later on with the blood stains becomes Rakta Varaha. So then what happened was Vidura is very eager to know about the other Varahas. You told me the Varaha who came in Swayambhuva Manmantra. I'll also want to know about the Varaha in the other Manmantra. You introduced it anyways. So please tell. So that time, Brahmaji, he started narrating a story. The story that he started narrating, he said, first you have to know something else before you know this past time. And that is there were a personality called Diti and Kashyap. And Diti saw that she had 12 co-wives. All the children, all were the daughters of Daksha Prajapati in the Chakshushman mantra. And these co-wives were her sister only. All were married to Kashyapa. So they all had children. Aditi had children, Dana had children. And all others also had children. Kadru had children. Vanita had children. But she was not having any children. So she got the turn, I also want to have children. So she approached Kashyapa at the Sayankala, the Sandhya, which is actually meant to do spiritual activities. And she started seducing him into having union with him. And Kashyapa knew it very well, that if she's so desperate that if I do not unite with her right now, she's going to go somewhere else. There is a principle that comes that men should be trained in brahmacharya and women should be trained in chastity. That is the principle of the entire section. If women were trained in chastity, she will not go anywhere else other than her husband. Narinam bhushanam atihi. Yes. Sarvari bhushanam chandro. Who is the ornament of the sky? Not just any moon, full moon. Prithvi bhushanam raja. Who is the ornament of the earth? Yes? Not just any king, Krishna conscious king. Yes? And who is an ornament of a lady? Not just any husband, Krishna conscious husband. So make your husbands Krishna conscious. And finally, Vidya Sarvasya Bhushanam. If you see the Krishna conscious transcendental knowledge that Lord Shri Krishna has mentioned in the Gita, that is the ornament of everybody, whoever possesses it. That's the real ornament. Right? And men should be trained in brahmacharya. You should have waited for one prahar. One prahar should be maintained. As per Manu Samhita principles, there is a particular time. The Antim Prahar is the time to unite. Each day is mentioned into 3 praharas. Ashta prahar. 3 hours is 1 prahar. So if 3s are 24 hours. So the last prahar is meant for such activities. And if these activities are performed properly, Lord Krishna says, Balam balavadam chaham kamaraga varjitam dharmat aviruddho bhuteshu kamosmi. I am born out of that sex life. But this was against. And the moment some responsible people, Brahmanas are the most responsible people of society, they perform such an activity which is against the Shastras, the result is going to be very severe. So Kashyapa warns her, now what's going to happen? Bhutanath, the master of all the ghosts, hobgoblins, and spirits. Who is he? Who is Bhutana? Shiva. The same personality we are discussing. So after creation was over, they were given preaching department also. And nobody was willing to preach to this class. नहीं, हम लोग ये party की handle करेंगे, ये किसी और को दे दो. Shiva came forward and he volunteered to uplift the position of these souls who nobody wants to even talk about. That's the compassion that Shiva has. So what he does is any couple not properly following the regulative principles of a married life, he impregnates the womb of that lady with such kind of creatures. आ गया, आज तेरा time आ गया, जाओ तुम. So like that, two very ghastly creatures were born. And as soon as they were born, the entire universe का light चला गया. And all demigods were talking to each other. Indra, चलो hello, Surya, अरे क्या हो गया? What happened to you? सूर्य देव से मैंने कुछ नहीं किया. I did not turn off the lights. Really? So the electricity तेरा department है? क्या हो गया? I am bewildered. I think we all should go to Brahma. They all go to Brahma. And that's when Brahma tells them what has happened or what is about to happen. जो होने वाला है, that he describes. And then the demigods start to hear, and for multiple reasons. One of the reasons is to dissipate the lamentation of all the devatas, and number two, to tell the history. There's a description of the Vaikuntha Lokas. That's a beautiful section. I'm not getting into the details. The beautiful shlokas also there of how the residents live. So he describes, and finally he says, he narrates the pastime of how the four Kumaras entered into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The seventh gate, they were checked by Jai and Vijay. And now this Vaikuntha Loka, which is being described, is above the Satyalok. It's just above the Satyalok. Yes, that's called Brahma Lok in many scriptures. Dasha Varsha Sahasrani, Dasha Varsha Tanacha, Rama Raja Upasitva, Brahma Lokam Gamaishyatha. So this Brahma Lok is mentioned in Ramayana, it's mentioned in Mahabharata, it's mentioned in Bhagavatam, it's mentioned in Prabhupada purports, but there's a Loka just above Satyalok. Brahma Loka Gamaishyatha. And that is the same Loka which was described in 2nd canto, 9th chapter. So he's continuing the description here. Last time he had just taken a drone view. But now he's taking an individual zoom view where he's showing all the residents, their activities, of how their internal view of what is their consciousness. Gandhena Khandita Diyo. I don't want to say, I'll get into it. I'm coming out. How Tulsi, how the flowers, how the birds. Yes, all this description is mentioned. And after that, he mentions about the cursing of the two Jai and Vijay gatekeepers of Vaikuntha. And these gatekeepers are the ones who have become, yes, they are going to appear. They are inside. Yes, program is installed. They may be activated anytime. So beware. So Prabhupada writes all varieties of calamities and nuisances which are prevailing in the entire creation is an indication of material nature that there are demoniac forces around. That's what he says. Then later on, after answering all these questions, Parikshit Maharaj had asked about Visarga. So Visarga starts actually in the 3rd canto itself. The 3rd canto is not titled as Visarga because there's just a beginning. So Swayambhu Manu and Shatarupa, we come back to that topic. They had 5 children, 2 sons and 3 daughters. The 2 sons were Priyavrat and Uttanapat. And the 3 daughters were Devahuti, Akuti and Prasuti. So first they take Devahuti's section. And Devahuti is such a beautiful girl. It's described that she was on the top of the building of where her father said, Swayambhu Manu, who's ruling in Kanpur today. Today's Kanpur, Aryavat. Aryavat is a tract of land in between Ganges and Yamuna and in between Himalayas and Vindhyachal. That tract of land is called Aryavat. So in Aryavat, most of the kings ruled. All the Chandravamshi, Suryavamshi Rajas also ruled in that tract only, we see. Yes, they all stayed there. So that's the standard they had. It's a very pious place. Ganga, Yamuna, kidhar bhi jana hai, easy access. Himalaya jana hai, chalo, sannyas lena, upar gaye. Tapasya karne Vindhyachal aa gaye. So they have access to everything, right? So strategically, it's a very powerful place. Naimisharanya, many of the things, Ayodhya, all come there. So they ruled from there. So Kanpur. So that is where from Kanpur he goes to Himalayas. Why? To find a suitable match for his daughter. It was so beautiful that once a Gandharva who was, see, she was playing with the ball, a Gandharva, he fell down from the flame. Seedha ghir gaya wo. Upar se, Just by looking at the form of Devavati. Such a beautiful girl. And where he should have gone for looking for a bridegroom, where? अच्छे business खानदान में, फिर कोई और राज्य है, वहाँ चलते हैं. No, he went to Himalayas, Bindu Sarovar. Why? Because he wanted a very, very saintly damad, a son-in-law who is a Krishna conscious devotee. That's what his consideration was. And this Kardama Muni was given instruction personally by Brahma that you have to do progeny. So he meditated thoroughly on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and Lord appeared there, and he cried tears seeing the devotion of Kardama, and that place became Bindu Sarovar. And then he expresses his desire to the Lord that I want to, he admits very humbly that I have material desires. Actual reason is he wants to have a Vatsalya connection with me. He wants Lord to come in his family. That is the actual reason. He says, Lord, I want you to come. So he says that there has to be some medium, right? Not everybody is omnipotent like Lord to produce a son without any mother. So he said, well, I want to fulfill the instructions of my master and my father, Brahma. Bhadam nitya anumanyeta karya karati putrapi. So he's glorified as being a very obedient son, Kardama. He says, yes, Bhadam, yes, sir. Prabhupada writes that in the pulpit. So thus he wanted to have Lord as a son. So Lord said, don't worry. In few days, you're going to get a very nice bride. You're going to be a bridegroom, and I will have me as my son. So Swayambhu Manu comes, he offers obeisances to the saintly order, and then hands over his daughter and just leaves. Marriage ho gaya, pani grahanam. Shake hand means marriage. Khatam. Shake hand. Pani grahanam. Boy and a girl hold hand. It's done. So he performs the ceremony, and then he did not see, come on, where is your house? Kitna BHK hai? Bungalow hai, independent bungalow hai, nothing. He was a forest dwelling saint in the Himalayas. And Devavati just kept serving her husband. After a long time, he saw that her body was completely emaciated. And he noticed finally, meri patni jo dubli patli ho gayi. And then he decided to give her all the material facilities. And thus he created an aerial mansion. And after seeing aerial mansion, Swayambhu Manu, the father of mankind, was humbled. So such is the prowess of a Krishna conscious person. A Krishna conscious person, if he wants, can produce such kind of material opulence which is unparalleled. And everybody can just keep looking. Because Prabhupada writes in first chapter, 9th verse, that material prosperity follows spiritual prosperity. If there is spiritual prosperity, everything will come. Where there is Krishna, Lakshmi has to come. Yes, because Krishna is Madhava. Yes, Madhava. Ma is Lakshmi Ma. Dhava means one who controls, shelters, engages, is Madhava. So that has to happen. So he's had a very huge aerial mansion, and he also created with his mystic powers all varieties of maid servants, and it was made of Vaidurya, the flooring. Great, we don't have equivalent of Vaidurya in our English. Very deficient language. And then she was completely rejuvenated, replenished. And then he united with her and produced 9 daughters. And then he said, all right, I have given you what you needed. Now I'll take sannyas. He said, no. She reminded him, Putyarte kriyate bharya, vindarte kriyate putra. She quoted the Shastras. It's ultimately, putra is something, the jewel, which is also needed for an Nari. I want a son. He said, all right. She said that I was so much time with you, but I never valued her association. How unfortunate. But you give me a son and go, who's an embodiment of all knowledge, and I'll receive enlightenment from that son. Please. I said, all right, I'll give you a son. And then as soon as Kapil Dev is born, the one with golden hair, yes, the original Kapil Dev, not the 83 wala. Yes. So then Kardama Muni leaves and goes. Because he was in Dasya Bhav. He could not be in Vatsalya. That was the main reason. He could not be a father of his master. So he just left. And then Kapila Dev, being the embodiment of the knowledge, gives a series of wonderful lectures. Because by that time, Devavati was also frustrated. I am frustrated with this material enjoyment. Now I want moksha. And he says the best way to attain moksha is by sadhu sangha. Prasangam ajaram pasham atmani kaviyo vidhu saeva sadhu sukrito moksha dwaram apavritam. Yes, you just develop attachment to sadhus and you will get moksha. And then he mentions who is a sadhu. It's a long story. Titikshva karunya karunika sugritam sarvadena ajata shatrava shanta sadhava sadhu bhushanam. He mentions a lot of qualities of who's a sadhu, how to take association. And after that, she was a moksha aspirant. But when she hears from him, she says, no, I want to now learn about bhakti. I feel that's better. Yes. So very gradually and systematically, Kapila takes her through the process of bhakti by first explaining, before you take to bhakti also, first understand the material nature. So he explains about the different 24 elements once again. And then later on, he takes her to the process of yoga. How exactly to meditate on the Paramatma in the heart, by part. Because dharana means what? Dharana is holding the form of Lord. But dhyana means to meditate on each and every limb of the Supreme Lord. That is called dhyana. Right? Step by step. That's all explained. How to take darshan of the Lord. And then she is desperate to know about bhakti. I want to know about bhakti. And there, he says, Bhakti Yogascha Bahuvida Bhamini. So there are multiple paths, but we conclude there are 3 types. Now, bhakti is dependent on the practitioner in the mode of ignorance, practitioner in the mode of passion, and practitioner in the mode of goodness. Abhisandaya yo himsam dambam matsare nevava sambrambi bhinnadrik bhavam mai kuryasa tamasi. So easy way to remember. I had made a sutra when I studied first time. Paves, P-A-V-E-S. So bhakti in the mode of ignorance means P for pride, A for anger, B for violence, E for envy, S for separatist. So if you are having these mentalities, then one is practicing bhakti in ignorance. Then what about bhakti in the mode of passion? Bhakti in the mode of passion is performed for 3 reasons. Foe, enemy, F-O-E. Fame, enjoyment, and opulence. Somebody wants fame, somebody wants enjoyment, somebody wants opulence. For that purpose, one is practicing bhakti. That is passion. What is goodness? Now, goodness is that state where one practices bhakti to be liberated from all the sufferings of this world. That Kapil Dev very clearly says, Sahalokya sarishti samipya sarupekatvam apyuta diyamanam na grinanti vinamat sevanam janam. My devotees don't want these 5 types of liberation. My pure devotees, if you give them 5 liberations but you don't give them service, they are not going to accept it. So then after explaining the process of bhakti, then Kapila Dev explains about what if one doesn't perform bhakti, then he will lead a very sinful life. How that person is tortured at the deathbed by their own relatives. That's all described. And then finally such a person has to take birth again in the womb of another mother. Punarapi janamam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janani, chatare shayanam. She take birth again. And that movements of the living entity in the womb is described. Yes. Later on, Kapila Dev gives us final instructions to Mother Devahuti. And then Kapila Dev goes to the Kapila Ashram. Devahuti goes back to God. Kapila Ashram is there in the Ganga Sagar. The place, actually Ganga Sagar, later on it came to be known like that, where the Ganges meets the Bay of Bengal. That place is called Ganga Sagar. So that happened on the day of Makar Sankranti. So then also there is Ganga Sagar Magh Mela, they call it, in the Magh Mas. And there about 15 million people come to take bath there. It is said that anybody who takes bath there will get fruits as good as 100 Ashwamedh Yajna ka fruit phal milega. The person will also get liberated. So these are all different fruits mentioned there. Because that is the Kapila Ashram we hear. And then now Devahuti's lineage is over. And our talk time is also over. I'll make it quick. Can I? Quickly make it. Okay. So if you see, the 4th canto is Visarga Srishti, proper, started. Because there Visarga was hardly anything. So proper Visarga Srishti starts. And then there is a very short description of Akuti who married Ruchi Muni. Akuti, Ruchi, their dynasty is mentioned. Very fast. See, Bhagavatam goes really fast when there is something not very important. But when there is something important, Bhagavatam zooms into that. So then Prasuti, her lineage starts. So then Prasuti's lineage starts. That time, all Prasutis, all daughters, everything is mentioned. And Prasuti had one daughter called Sati who didn't have a child. Then the question came, why didn't she have a child? Then the entire episode of Daksha is narrated, and Daksha is the example of bhakti in the mode of ignorance. He wanted to perform Yajna Vishnu, he wanted to please the Lord, everything, but he was conceited, arrogant, blasphemous, envious towards Shiva. We know the whole episode, so I'm not getting into details. So from that entire section, we understand only one thing. Yes, even if we are performing Yajna, if we are offensive in our mentality, then the result will not be pleasure of Vishnu, the result will be destruction of oneself, one's associates, and one's entire ceremonies. Everything will be destroyed. The entire Yajna got destroyed because of offense to Lord Shiva. So this is one thing we have to avoid. Mahat Atikrama. This has to be avoided. We should never perform offense. Whether we progress slowly, there's no problem, but never offend devotees. So that is the lesson we learn from that whole section. And then comes the lineage of Uttanapad. Why not Priyavrat? He is the eldest son. Priyavrat Maharaj took sannyas. So he is not mentioned. He goes on, he says, I want to be a sannyasi. I want to go into renounced order. So Uttanapad, the second brother, he becomes the king. He becomes a Samrat, Ekarat, the entire Bhupati. And Uttanapad, we then hear his lineage. He had two children, Uttama and Dhruva. And we know the whole pastime that happened. And Dhruva Maharaj is an example of bhakti in the mode of passion. So what do we learn from Dhruva Maharaj section? From Dhruva Maharaj section, we have many lessons actually. At every letter we can have lessons, but I'm just highlighting and summing up the main lessons. One lesson that we learn is that our bhakti performed with material desire for fame, opulence, enjoyment may give us Krishna, but will delay our going back to Godhead. That's what happened to Dhruva. Dhruva Maharaj was told 36,000 years on earth, uske baad Dhruva Loka, let the entire day be finished, then you come to me. And he was crying, Stana Vilashi, Tapasosti Toham, Tvam Praptamam Deva Mudindri Guhyam, Kachan Vichinnam Api Divyaratnam, Swamin Kritarthosmi Varam Dayach. I didn't want, what did I do? I don't want any benediction. I got you, Lord. So our material desires are going to delay our going back to Godhead. That's what our devotee does. That is the one lesson, prominent lesson. Second lesson, again about offenses. Offenses committed against a devotee when the person is not a devotee. That will also pay and have its effect. When Suruchi offended Dhruva with her harsh words, that time Dhruva was not a devotee. But that offense manifested later, taking a toll on her life and also the life of her son. That is another lesson. Dhruva Maharaj did not go back to God. No. Because there was some lesson pending. Dhruva Maharaj with his purity could see the Lord. But Lord wanted to show all of us, along with purity, we need maturity also to return back to Godhead. And that maturity comes in the Dhruva Yaksha, that episode, where he comes and gets a very mature counseling from Swayambhu Manu. That is something I normally, we take Art of Correcting Others as a workshop. I personally refer to this section in that. How he corrects with proper value systems. It's a deep analysis, I'm not getting into it. And then how Dhruva Maharaj takes blessings of Kuvera and gets bhakti. And finally, the last lesson to sum up this section is Dhruva Maharaj, when he sees the Vaikuntha plain and Mrityu, Mukulatanjalim, she is bending down. Mrityu is right there. Please step on me and go ahead. So that time Dhruva Maharaj, what he does, he goes to all the saints and sages who were present there and takes all of the. He doesn't say, "Arey, main to ja raha hu. Tum log karte raho na, aapka ye kya hai? Karo. Main ja raha hu. I'm going back." No, he doesn't have that. He rather takes everybody's blessings. He's humble enough to take everybody's blessings and say that, well, it is by your association, by your mercy that I'm going back to Godhead. So please pray for me that I continue my wonderful services to the Lord there. And they all bless him. Another lesson that we learn is if you have connected somebody to bhakti and that person is going back to Godhead, you will go before that person. That's what Dhruva Maharaj was a little worried. What about my mummy ka kya? What about my mother? And they show him. आगे देख रहे हो? आगे क्या है? किसका प्लान है? तुम्हारी मम्मी का. She's going ahead. So that's where Prabhupada very humbly writes, if this ISKCON movement could produce one pure devotee, then I would go back to it. This is utmost humility of Srila Prabhupada. And then going on in the dynasty of Dhruv Maharaj comes the pastime of Prithu. That is, of course, we cannot say this is Sattva, but that is what Sattva, Shuddha Sattva actually. Bhakti in pure state. That was performed by Prithu. And the lesson that we learn from Prithu is we need to understand that in this world, we have to perform sacrifice. Yes, sacrifices have to be performed. But sacrificing one's opinions, sacrificing one's conceptions, one's mentality is a far greater sacrifice than performing another sacrifice. So you perform 99 sacrifices. But the best sacrifice he did was to sacrifice 100 sacrifices. This is very difficult. Yes, but Lord was pleased with it. So that is the lesson that we learn from this section. And moving on, in the dynasty of Prithu comes the Prachini Barishat. And this person, Barishat Raja, Prachini Barishat, was a very, very materially attached person. But through the association of Narad Muni, he gets purified. And Narad Muni preaches to him. This is actually a preaching section of how Narad Muni presents the Krishna consciousness in such a fascinating manner by narrating the Puranjara Upakhyana. This is actually his own story. Prachini Barishat's story presented in such a manner that and Barishat Raja is very happy. Yes, go on, tell more. Arey, kya hua Puranjan ka? Puranjan baitha hai idhar. Main kya? I am Puranjan? Okay, all right. He didn't even realize. And he ended up conveying the very vital lesson to this person through. Then also there's a beautiful story of Vaidarvi, Maladwaja. So many wonderful things. He narrates. That allegory you have to read. In my Bhakti Vaibhav, this was my presentation of doing this. So I had done thorough analysis of this section and PPT even now. There. So after this was done, then there comes a section, then the camera shifts to Prachetas. Now Prachetas were the 10 children of Prachini Bari Raja whom he had sent. You go and perform austerities and after that come and rule the earth. And Barishat Raja was waiting for them. That let my sons come, I retire ho jaunga. Then Narad Muni gives one more dose of attachment. And then Barishat Raja gives, I don't care who is going to be the king, I am getting out. I'm out of this place. So he leaves. What is appreciated about the Prachetas is their spirit of cooperation. Dharam Grinidvam Badram Vo Yuyam Me Dripanandana. Sauhardena Spritak Dharma Tushtoham Sauhridenava. You perform 10,000 years of sacrifice, austerities in the waters. That is, I'm not impressed with that. I'm pleased with the spirit of cooperation. Now, this is really difficult. I was hearing a lecture of my Guru Maharaj where he was mentioning about 4 types of austerities. मैंने सुना महाराज 3 ही मैंने सुना है महाराज शारीरिक वाचिक and मानसिक. What are those 4 types? 4th one कौन सा है? So Maharaj says the first austerity he told is austerity of performing one's sadhana, attentive chanting. This is the real austerity. The second austerity he says is following the 4 regulative principles strictly. This is the second austerity. The third austerity that Maharaj says is the austerity. First thing what I told? Yes, sadhana. The second austerity is about following the 4 regulative principles very strictly. The third austerity is not to hold ourselves back in service. Don't be a balakapati. I'll hold something else for Maya. No. Somebody don't hold your wealth. Don't be a dhanakapati. So whatever you have best, you have to give it for Krishna. Don't leave anything for Maya. So don't be a kapati. So withholding, no. Austerity is to give your best, 100%. The final austerity is austerity of cooperation, which will take personally for me, though it's going to take 10 million times. So now Prabhupada's last Mahavakya was, if you have love for me, cooperate. And these people, they attracted Lord's mercy by cooperation. Because they 10 people mean 10 different egos, 10 opinions, 10 ideologies, 10 thought process. But still, they never left each other's company. They continued and went on with their austerities. And this is something that actually pleased the Supreme Lord. And that is an indication that we have to call it a day. So thank you all very much. It was really a Bhagavatam experience for me also. Don't worry, but anyway, as Smita Mataji was telling the organizer, Prabhuji, ye to trailer hai. Now we are going to, in depth, we are going to be twisting. Srimad Bhagavatam Arthanam Aswado Rasikei Saha Sajati Asye Snigde Sadhu Sandasvato Vare. Bhagavatam can only be relished when you relish one letter of Bhagavatam. And I really hope and pray that each and every one of you get this beautiful experience in your lives. Thank you all very much. Nantrachma Bhagavatam ki, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki, Samasta Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Thank you all very much. So next 2 days you're going to have very nectarine katha because I'm not coming. The speaker will be His Grace Suta Goswami Prabhu Hari Bol. So I have requested Prabhuji to cover 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th. How is he going to do it? That he'll manage. Yes, and the other team is so very excited. These people have shifted one slot ahead. So 6 baje bula rahe hain. So I said, "Kal mera nahi hai, kal se tu Goswami ko bulaiye." No, imagine. So thank you. Question. They all have a question. Prabhu, kab jayenge? When are you going to leave? Yes, please go ahead. Thank you. He performs sacrifices. Yes. Okay. Want some elaboration of that? Okay. Actually, there are 100 Ashwamedha Yajnas. You perform that, you get the position of Indra. So when this sacrifice was being performed, that time, after he performed the 99 sacrifice, Indra was stealing away the horse of sacrifice. And because he was stealing away the horse of sacrifice, what was happening is the sacrifice was getting interrupted. He had his son Vijita Ashwa, who brought back the Ashwa. And Indra was creating multiple forms of apasampradayas, of Kapalika Brahmanas and etc. And thus the entire atmosphere was becoming corrupted. So Brahmaji came to Prithu and told him, leave this sacrifice. Chodo. 99 kar diya. He never said that. He immediately left it. And because he left it, then Indra realized, my God, he's such a noble soul. I was envious of him and he was angry towards me. So envy, anger, both were there. But he just left it. No, I'll not do it. You will be pleased if I don't. Yes, Lord will be pleased, he said. Lord will be more pleased if you don't. So there was no 100 sacrifice, but this sacrifice was a greater sacrifice. So Lord, I didn't elaborate much because I presume that many of you know the story. Haribol. Thank you. So you know all this.